The Timeline is a Blue Wire podcast. Welcome to the Timeline, of Phoenix Suns podcast, a Phoenix Suns season preview. My name is Mike, here with Sam. How you doing, Sam?
You know what they say, another year, another dollar, Mike. I'm happy to, I'm just kidding. I'm really happy to be here. This is season number 7 for us. Am I correct?
Yeah.
Am I wrong? Okay, season number 7. That feels weird to say. We've gone through all phases of the life cycle of the Phoenix Suns at this point, but you know who's been a constant through it all, always willing to talk to us, no matter how bright his star shines. He is here again today, and his name is Kellan Olson. Kellan, how are you?
What's up? That is far too kind of you guys to say. Hey, any time, and I've said it ever since I came on the first time, any time, and that remains the case. Like, I'm still going to be in playback this year. I'm going to be pretty busy, but I'll be in the playback streams. I'll dabble.
Appreciate you for joining us, and if you haven't heard, Kellan has his own radio show on 98.7 Arizona Sports, so check out Kellan's radio show. When is that show, and what time does that air, Kellan?
Yeah, so the best way to explain it to you guys, especially your audience, is that we're on select weeknights, but the thing is, when there's a Suns game that night, we won't have a show, but Mitch Vareldis and I do both the pregame show and the postgame show now, so if there's like a really big game or whatever, and you're driving home from it, turn on your radios. We'll be taking callers. You can call into the show, and we'll be doing that all year. And then we have our show select weeknights at AZ Sports Night is the Twitter feed. You can follow it, and a lot of you listening will just want to hear the Sun stuff. That's easy. You can just go into the timestamps in our descriptions, and we lay out what we're talking about. So hope people will check it out.
Have you gotten any fun callers yet? Have you developed any rapport with the listeners out there?
We've only done like 2 or 3 caller segments, but yeah, there's a few signature names that like always call into all the shows that you're familiar with and you kind of know coming in. But yeah, we'll have more. We'll have more for the those nights for sure.
Can me and Sam call in and talk to you?
Yeah, anyone listening can call in. Feel free. 602-260-9870. See, I even know the number off the top of my head.
Congratulations, by the way. I'm really excited about that.
Thank you. Yeah, I'm super excited with what it'll do for my Suns coverage specifically, because I'm going to be just so much more even locked into the team than I have been previous years, I think.
That sounds amazing. All right, we have a lot to get into. We're gonna go over the biggest questions. Same thing we do every year. The biggest questions facing the Phoenix Suns this season. I'm also going to recap the offseason. Before we get into all of that, just want to real quick say, ethicalhoops.com. We have a bunch of new merch on there. I know a lot of people start tuning in to this podcast on this episode, so it's a good time to bring it up. Check out ethicalhoops.com. Shirts, hoodies, sweaters, hats, mugs, all kinds of good stuff inspired by this team and this podcast. Check it out. We appreciate you for supporting us there. I'm going to get into, normally I produce a segment at the beginning of our season preview, getting into every transaction in the offseason. It was tough this year because normally I pull clips of like Woj talking about it, but let's be honest, not a lot of clips of ESPN talking about Mason Plumlee and Monte Morris. So I'm just going to quickly run through everything that happened in the offseason. We'll get quick thoughts on the offseason by each of us, and then we'll move on to the biggest questions facing the Suns. Obviously, all of this is related. First thing that happened immediately after the season ended last year, the Grayson Allen extension. That was on April 16th. I forgot that it was before the playoffs even began, was the Grayson Allen extension. The Suns were then swept at the end of April. On May 9th, remember, I think it was 11 days after the last game, Frank Vogel was fired. May 11th, 2 days later, Mike Budenholzer was announced and then hired. Then they drafted Ryan Dunn and Oso Ighodaro. In free agency, they signed Mason Plumlee, Monte Morris, Bol Bol was re-signed, Okogie was re-signed, Damian Lee was re-signed, and then right before training camp, boom, surprise, Tyus Jones signing out of nowhere. And then that was essentially the full roster. The roster that it matters the most for this conversation that we're going to have today: guards, Devin Booker, Bradley Beal, Tyus Jones, Monte Morris, Damian Lee, Grayson Allen. Some of these guys kind of straddle the guard wing position for this team. But the wings, KD, Josh Okogie, Ryan Dunn, Bol, Royce O'Neal. Obviously, Bol kind of a big slash wing. And then the bigs, Nurkic, Plumlee, Oso Ighodaro. The notable players that are not returning from last season, none. There's kind of none that like played an important role.
Yeah, none. I think
Drew
is fair
Eubanks played minutes, but like
Right.
nobody wanted him to return, so it's not like the Suns really lost any talent from last season. The
Eric
big
Gordon.
major Eric Gordon, probably the most important one, right? I think replaced by Grayson Allen, now moving to the bench. Tyus Jones kind of replaced that production in one way or another, at least the minutes. But other than that, all of the major players returning, the big three, all of the full starting five from last year, with Grayson Allen moving to the bench, Tyus Jones replacing him on the in the starting lineup. We all know Grayson recruited him, longtime former teammates. Overall, Kellan, how do you think this offseason was for the Suns?
I think they did really well, and it's not that we're just grading on a curve. We're just grading on what they were able to get done. I think that there are several teams you could look at comparatively and pull up what they were able to do without the restrictions in place, like they weren't even a first or a second apron team, and they didn't get as much done as the Suns were able to. I think that the headliner here has to be the amount of money that they spent, while everyone keeps dodging the second apron because, I can't make moves and I'm using this as an excuse because I really don't want to pay a ton of money. Ishbia is just continuing to spend money on this team, and I think we'll get into this, but this team would be radically different if it didn't have one of Grayson Allen or Royce O'Neal, and they have both. You look at their mindset with the draft, like if they didn't have Oso, I think that people would be freaking out a little bit about center, and we're probably going to talk about that position a little later. But like you look at Dunn as another one where that's the type of thing where they could have taken Oso at 28 and then not taken Dunn. Like they just did a lot with a little. The Tyus Jones thing, I don't want to give them a ton of credit for because I thought it was fortuitous because it all it takes is one team with money that could have offered him a really good role, and I think that he would have gotten there. I just think that most teams that were offering him money were bad and weren't really in the right spot for him and the point he's at in his career. But they do deserve credit for having the ecosystem in place that Tyus Jones would believe in to get here. So I thought they had a really good offseason. There really wasn't a ton for them to get done, but they managed to. And I know that there's holes in their roster, but it kind of reminds me of the first summer for James Jones, I want to say, when he did the DeAnthony Melton trade with Josh Jackson involved, where he had all this shit to get done, and he somehow got just about all of it done without much to work with. And I think this reminds me of that as well.
And what'd you think, Sam?
Yeah, I agree with Kellan. Obviously, it's not a flashy offseason, but it didn't need to be. And on the margins, they were able to more or less consistently nail these moves. It's funny that Kellan brings up early James Jones, though, because I was going to draw a little bit of a contrast to early James Jones tenures, not that particular DeAnthony Melton offseason that he's referring to, but I feel like consistently in the past we have criticized the James Jones regime for being bad at these margin moves and, maybe not taking seriously at times the limited assets that they've had. At times in the Suns franchise cycle when they were more asset rich, coming up during the DeAndre Ayton, Mikal Bridges era, trading first round picks for objectively bad role players and, selling off second round picks and kind of just like making some of these frustrating moves at times. Whereas, he was able to at the same time, like absolutely nail the franchise altering, let's bring in Chris Paul for, Ricky Rubio and Kelly Oubre, right? This offseason is sort of the inverse of all that. They had very little to work with. I've had trouble finding people who, I think there are some Suns fans who are traumatized, sure, especially by the way they've gone out in the playoffs the past few years, and who have just like consistently lowered their expectations. Honestly, Mike, you might be among that group of just like you're keeping your expectations lowered until you need to see it with your own eyes. But everyone I talk to seems like the vibes are pretty good right now. Everyone likes Ryan Dunn and Oso Agudaro, and everyone likes Tyus Jones and Monte Morris. Mason Plumlee we're maybe a little bit more split on, but I think this was largely an uncontroversial and thereby successful summer.
I think they deserve a lot of credit, to Kellan's point, for re-signing Grayson Allen and Royce O'Neal, in the fact, just specifically Matt Ishbia, right, in this case, because it's going to cost them a ton of money to keep both of those players. So that was huge for this team overall. So if you just factor that into the offseason, that was big. But as far as like additions that were added to the team, to me, unless we saw a lot from Ryan Dunn and Oso Agudaro in preseason, which we did end up getting a lot more, we're going to talk a lot about them, I'm sure. It wasn't until the Tyus Jones signing that I started feeling a little bit more confident about this team this season. I think they needed some sort of viable upgrade to the starting five for me to feel a lot better, and I feel like they got that once that Tyus Jones signing was completed, where it all started to make a little bit more sense. Don't get me wrong, I was excited about Monte Morris, and I wanted to see a lot from Ryan Dunn and Oso Agudaro, but it's really difficult to count on rookies to play well in their first season. So it is what it is. So the Tyus Jones moment to me was when it all sort of upgraded a little bit, and I started to feel a little bit better about this team, particularly in the regular season. And we could talk about how it all translates to the playoffs as part of this conversation. But overall, you say we're not grading on a curve. I kind of am, Kellan. I kind of am grading on a curve because of the limitations that they have. That's just how it works. But it can't be overstated, the impact of having an ownership group willing to put the money down when every other ownership group is running away from that as quickly as possible. That is an advantage. It might be a short-term advantage, but it is an advantage right now for this season because that's just what's happening. Denver is the example to look at. They're a team that wasn't willing to put up the money to keep a championship team together. Yeah, and who knows what they're going to be this year? I really don't know. Maybe they'll still be great because that's how good Jokic is. But if they're not, if they're the 8th seed, nobody's going to be shocked based on the way the last few off seasons went. So we'll see how it all ends up turning out. But overall, I think we all agree, a good off season, good players, additive players were added to this team, and that made the depth overall better. They just have to be able to compete. I think it's interesting too. There is more like sort of guaranteed talent on this team than we're not saying if Yuta could shoot like he did last year, or if KBD can shoot like he did last year, they can be good players for this team. There's just more, I think, that you can count on. Of course, the rookies are still a bit of the question mark, but outside of that, a pretty great offseason. I'm pretty happy with it. Let's get into what we think are the biggest questions for this team. I think we all prepared a few questions, and we're just going to pitch them at each other and talk through each of them. I'm sure there's going to be some overlap, so we'll see how much we get into all of these. Kellan, since you're our guest, I think it's fair to give you the floor for your first question.
Okay, so I figured I was going to go first, and I could go in a lot of different directions here. So I'll start with one that I think is pretty broad yet specific at the same point. And if people have been listening to me on the shows the last couple of weeks, or our podcast the last couple of weeks, or even the last couple of months, they'll kind of know where I'm going here. And don't take the question for what it is. It's just going to be more to spark the conversation here. The question is, does Bradley Beal work? And work can be defined by you in several different ways. But what I mean by work is, can you get a really good version of a basketball player out of Bradley Beal in this situation? Now, what that could be is a little bit of a statistical version of what we saw last year, where he's averaging between 16 to 18 points, grabs 5 rebounds, dishes out 5 assists. His true shooting percentage last year was a career high, so I think that's something for him to certainly build off from an efficiency standpoint, which is weird because we used to talk about this on the playbacks all the time. It felt like he could have shot 60% from the field last year when he shot 50 with how many open looks that it felt like he was missing. But to that point, the comparison that I've been making is that this is a big three. I know that a lot of your listeners probably hate having this called a big three, and it was weird being at the open practice over the weekend because that's when like Bull's getting a crazy reception because everyone loves him, like Book, KD. Like the gap of Brad, like where he gets cheered by the fans and like those little moments was interesting to me. And I feel like
you noticed it. It was felt in the crowd.
It did not feel like the third star getting cheered at all. It just felt like one of the guys on the team. And I feel like Brad is certainly in that range for most of the fan base right now. And that was just like a general observation for me to bring up. But the point that I've been making is that it is a big three. And the third guy in the big threes is almost always the most important guy. And so if Brad can figure out some of the third banana stuff, which in my opinion, when he was about 4 to 5 games in after coming back from injury, you were seeing that guy. I think the game in New Orleans is the one we all reference the most when he was guarding Zion. But there were about a half dozen to a dozen performances over the regular season where I thought he was doing that stuff. And it wasn't just the 37-point outburst or 42-point outburst, whatever. I thought that he was doing all the glue guy stuff. He was defending well. He was cutting. He was rebounding. It felt like he was just actively involved in the game and making an impact that way, where it's so easy for someone in his role, being the scorer he's been for so long, to get disconnected and do the Andrew Wiggins thing where you're like, oh, Brad's been out there for 6 minutes and I haven't noticed him.
He needs to fit in, not fit out.
Correct.
Is what you're saying here, yeah.
So if this works, then this team can win a championship. If it doesn't work, then that's where our conversations get really interesting, because I think it affects not only the ceiling of the team this year, but then we have really interesting conversations about the next couple of years, and it's like, okay, whatever the KD situation looks like, this is still mostly about Brad and Book for the long term. And if Brad's not a really good player anymore, what does Book have to stay around here? Like I could go down that path, but I'll stick in this year for now and just say there is no iteration of this team that works if Brad is either hurt a lot like he was last year or is going through major doubt, like parts of being ineffective. And this is where people are saying, well, you just bench him or whatever. Like you put Royce or Grayson on the bench, you put in Dunn. I don't think it works that way, because you still need Brad's overall impact, because him giving that level of impact is far better than what those guys can provide. Like his potential is upside to contribute to the team is there. So it's my biggest thing. I think he's the key to their entire season.
Okay, I agree that he's super, super important, and I definitely want to talk about Brad a lot, but I'm slightly pushing back only because I have basically the same question. Mike, I don't know if you wrote something down about
mine.
Bradley
is
Beal
written almost exactly like Kellan's, which is, what is Bradley Beal now?
So, I wrote, what do the Suns need from Bradley Beal? But then I wrote a second side question. This is what I want to address, Kellan. Does it even matter? You are very clearly saying it does matter. And look, I understand 99%. You're right. That's like the rational approach. We're sure though that like Brad on the bench and Grayson in the starting lineup, or like a supercharged rookie season from Ryan Dunn where he gives them more of this defensive punch, or like we're sure that the ceiling of that team is just like not good enough. Because I don't know, I'm not 100% sure when I think about that scenario.
Well,
what do you mean by not good enough?
Not good enough to be a true contender.
Yeah.
So what I can say here is, and this is where again I think some people disagree, I think that the thing that is really fucking hard about what Brad has to do on this team is, I mentioned all this glue guy stuff. Guys, they're still going to need him to be like Bradley fucking Beal. They're going to need him to still be a guy who drops 37 one night. Like, in order for them to win a 7-game series, Brad is going to have to be their best overall player in at least one of those games, and maybe multiple games like that. You cannot, like, not retroactively, but in the future, like, discard him into a sixth man who's out there maybe 20 minutes or 30 minutes a game sometimes maybe. Because I don't think you can rely on Kevin and Devin to that extent, because then you're too top heavy. I think he is the guy who can balance all of it out from you being too reliant on Kevin and on Devin. Maybe this is my PTSD from them relying on Book too much year after year, but I just think he's the guy who balances everything out on both sides. Like, he could give you the glue guy stuff, and then he could still give you that third star, that third most impactful player kind of stuff. On your team.
The Olympics is the model, right? What we just saw in the Olympics, what Devin Booker did.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, I mean, it's definitely nice to have Devin Booker as your 5th best player. Yeah. But the Suns are not Team USA. I guess it's like, again, Kellan, you're right, but I wonder, like, I'm looking at third bananas on recent championship teams. These guys are so wildly different, the guys I'm about to bring up, but like Boston, you've got KP, 20 points per game. his 20 points are important. You know, the spacing is important, but like he's a defensive player. That's where his presence is really being felt. The year before that, Denver Nuggets, MPJ, 17.5 points per game was the third banana on that team. The year before that, believe it or not, the third leading scorer on the Warriors championship team, and I don't think anyone would say the third best player, but just the third leading scorer, was Jordan Poole at 18 points per game. You're not expecting that much out of these guys. And again, I feel like the expectations are just so low for Brad here. He should be able to hit his 17 or 18 points and kind of, you know, sometimes score 35 like you're saying, Kellan. I think the greater question is just, does he ever find a role where he's truly comfortable in the offense? But like statistical production, all of that stuff, I don't know. It's like, I feel like we're really not asking for that much.
Mike, sorry.
Mike, I'm going to read some.
I want to ask Sam just to follow up on that. So do you believe that either Brad or someone else, to your point on all those teams, hold on, I've got a text message from another campaign thing. Let me see which side it's coming on. Hold on. Dude, it's been, I don't know who
We've
leaks
got live breaking news.
I don't know who leaks my data, but it's gotten crazy for me the last couple of days. Okay, so those last three teams, not third leading scorers, but I think we can all agree the top three most impactful players on those teams. You got Drew, you got Aaron Gordon, and you got Wiggins. Do the Suns have a guy that can be impactful to that level?
Yeah.
Besides Brad?
Besides Brad?
Yeah. Like, can Grayson Allen be their Aaron Gordon or their...
Grayson Allen could be Andrew Wiggins.
Wiggins was incredible on that
He
run.
was really good.
I don't want to get into semantics, but I'm just like, that's kind of like, I get what you're saying, but the impactfulness, I just don't think they have the high-end depth to where superstar role player stuff that all those guys did, which is why Brad has to do it.
Does like OKC have that? Like, you're talking about top heavy, like they're super top heavy.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
Is that a concern for you, given that their over-under for wins is like 65 or 58?
Well, who's the third most impactful?
It's either Chet or Jalen Williams.
That's pretty good.
Yeah.
You know?
I mean, so here's what I hear is the problem is that, but we all knew this when we're getting into bringing this guy onto the team. It's like, it would be so great if Bradley Beal was 18 points per game and also 6'7" and plays four positions and, you know, locks down the perimeter on the point of attack. But he's just not that. And I love the fact that he guarded Zion in that one game.
2 games.
And 2 games. Okay, I'm sorry. He will continue to take on difficult defensive assignments this year. Maybe not Zion because evidently he lost weight. Brad did. I mean,
you don't think Zion did?
Zion did too. What are we asking for? What are we asking for? I still feel like we haven't answered the question. What is Brad's expectation?
Let me read you a few stats from preseason.
Uh-oh.
Bradley Beal shot 39% from the field and 31% from three. He had 9 assists to 8 turnovers in all of preseason. And the only players on the team that were worse in plus-minus than Bradley Beal in preseason were Colin Gillespie and Ty Washington. So I don't know what we're asking for. Now we can talk about that conversation, but it's got to be better than that. And there is a point of like diminishing returns, if you will, with him if he continues to play badly. And I don't think he's going to be like this in the regular season. But to say that the nightmare of the end of the Timberwolves series continued in preseason, for him in particular, I don't think it's like a stretch to say that. He looks bad in preseason. It never quite worked. He got kind of beat up a little bit too, and I think that impacted him a little bit. They're going to have to get used to how the refs are calling the game again this year and find ways to counter that. But a bad showing in preseason from him, he needs to be better than that. As far as what exactly we're asking from him, I don't know that it's that dissimilar from last year, except I do think there's some element of asking him to be the point guard in the last 30 or so games that he played in the regular season plus the playoffs was a mistake. It didn't work. He's not the same player that's capable of doing that anymore. Can he drive? Yes. Can he drive with the intent of trying to get everyone around him involved? No, that's not really what he's good at. He has to, in the words of Coach Bud, the scorers have to go back to being scorers. That's how he said it. So this is something that we need Bradley Beal to do. Now, I don't disagree that we can't ask him to be Aaron Gordon. If he could be Aaron Gordon, that would rock. because we kind of need Ryan Dunn to be that in some ways.
Well, like level of impact, not like the specific role.
Yeah. No,
but I don't think it's a coincidence that you started naming the 3 most important guys from championship teams, that they're all like super defensive.
Yeah, that's kind of the problem.
It's not a coincidence.
It's kind of the problem. It's kind of the problem. Well,
so it would be nice if he was that, but yeah.
Yeah, Sam, do you think this team can be like 21, where you've got Chris and Booker, your best players, pretty much every single night, and then the third guy is random? Some nights it's DA, some nights it's Jay, some nights it's Mikal, some nights it's Cam. Do you think the depth can be that much of a strength? Because if it can, then my concerns are probably overblown. Like I think it.
Well, yeah,
might,
I think your
could
concerns. I think your concerns still absolutely persist in the playoffs, but regular season wise, and so many ifs have to hit, right? Like to have that sort of season, Book and KD both need to play 75 games.
Yeah,
because they're not winning games, at least not consistently, when one of those 2 guys is sitting. If we're just assuming that Brad is bad now, so both those guys need to play 70 plus, if not 75 plus games. But yeah. I think their depth is really good, Kellan. Honestly, I think Tyus is really good. And
what about the playoffs though?
Yeah,
like,
well,
I don't disagree with you.
That's different.
I don't disagree with you that could help in the regular season, but like I think of 21, for example, or 22, in probably more so. The lack of other shot creators when the defense is actually ratcheted up in the playoffs, and how much they needed an extra one. And maybe that's all he needs to be. Like, he can do that. He didn't do it in the Minnesota series, but maybe he can do that now in a better role.
Again, I would just say let's look at the other teams in the Western Conference and understand that they're all, as they do their season preview pods, respectively, they're asking these questions too, right?
Yeah, it's
Denver,
true. It's true.
Denver, what the hell? What the hell, guys? Denver in the playoffs. What are you gonna do?
Let Westbrook be Westbrook, baby.
Yeah, I mean, Denver has to rely on Russell, some shot creation out of Russell Westbrook now. Dallas has to rely on significant levels of shot creation from Klay Thompson now. Bradley Beal, can you just be better than those guys? That's all I'm asking for.
Yeah,
that's all we need. I feel like, honestly,
it's a good point. What if, like, I hate to do this right now in the season preview, but what if it does go badly? What if Bradley Beal can't quite find his footing? Where does this team go next? Because I do think there is a version of this team that's still pretty damn good if he's not like the 3rd most important player on the team. Though, to your point, Sam, like if they just if Ryan Dunn had a supercharged rookie year, we're going to talk about him in a minute, I'm sure. Grayson Allen in that spot, we know what he can do as a starter, and they can play a little bit differently with a point guard in him in that spot. What happens? Do they put him on the bench? Is that something that you could see actually happening this season, Kellan? And does he accept that? Is there a world where they trade him because he wants to be moved?
They've got too much at stake, really, really not to go there. I think that ultimately, if we're 2 to 3 months into the season and he's just struggling, then they're going to have to look into other moves because their team's too deep as well. Like they've got, off the top of our head, we've got 3 guys who could fill into that spot: Grayson, Royce, and Dunn. Assuming Dunn is someone who can provide offensive, not be a negative on offense is the better way to phrase it. I think that's where he could ultimately be moved to the bench. But there's, like, I apologize if we're going too heavily from can this team just be fun to can this team win a championship, but we have to zoom out and really look at it for what it is, which is that, like, remember the Kevin Durant trade 2 years ago, the standards being set. Like, the only way that all of this was worth it is if they win a championship. And this is going to be, I think I said this on your guys' pod like 2 years ago once the KD trade happened. Like, every year, every fall, like the first year coming up that we're talking about is now their most best chance at winning a championship. So I believed that their first year with KD was their best chance. I think last year was their second best chance. And then this year, now, does it feel that way with hindsight? Maybe not. But the time is ticking on this. And I feel like this year ultimately could be their very last chance, especially if you want to, like, we won't go down this path, but if you want to look at like the West and how the younger teams especially, because there's a big, I think there's a vacancy right now. I think that you can point out flaws in every single top contender, like you're saying. But I think we're there with him. So I know this is going to make people nervous because I know a lot of people are nervous about Brad, but I think that he can figure out like getting 70% out of it. And if he can get 70% out of the role, then I think that he's going to be fine. and the team is going to be fine by default. But if he can get like 90 or 100% out of it, that's like the kind of untapped potential that I'm talking about. Like then we're talking about this team being the best team in the league.
I think it's going to be the biggest thing that fans pay attention to this season, and therefore we're going to be spending a lot of time talking about it this season.
Listen, life's all about leveling up. Whether you're handling business on the field or kicking it in your zone, you like to celebrate with cigars that match the moment. That's why you should link up with Famous Cigars to bring you a wild deal. Right now, you can grab 8 premium cigars for just $8. You heard that right. 8 top-rated cigars at $1 a stick. Top quality brands like Oliva, Romeo y Julieta, and Davidoff. Handpicked just for you and worth over $80. Hit up famouscigars.com/cam and lock in this exclusive deal. While you're there, check out their insane selection of premium cigars, all shipped fresh and fast from their massive 20,000 square foot humidor. That's half a football field. Famous Cigars has been in the game since 1939 and still family owned. So celebrate every win with the folks at Famous. 8 cigars for $8. famouscigars.com/cam.
Okay, I'm going to start with one of my biggest questions so far this season. And it's been a huge topic. It was a huge topic the last 3 seasons.
Kevin Young.
It was a huge topic in the preseason. And look, can the Suns sustain this level of three-point shooting during the regular season? And truthfully, the answer to that is no, but I'll explain why, and we'll discuss how they can actually shoot a ton of threes, or if they will. But in preseason, they were 6th in total three-point attempts per game in the entire preseason at 44 per game. The most in the NBA last season was 42.5 by the Boston Celtics. No team in the NBA shot over 40 last season. So they were 6th at 44. 10 teams in preseason shot over 40 three-point attempts in this preseason. That's a lot, obviously. But I looked at last year's preseason. The Suns were 29th in three-pointers attempted per game last preseason. They finished 25th. They actually improved from preseason to regular season. This has been the preseason of shooting a ton of three-pointers. Now, last year, teams shot more three-point attempts than they did in the regular season last year as well. But this current preseason that we just came out of was the most we've ever seen as far as three-point attempts. The Boston Celtics shot over 50 a game. It's a crazy amount of three-pointers attempted.
You have me looking at the whole list. Can I just quickly make a point on some other NBA teams? Let's be a hater. I feel like we've already been hating. Let's keep hating.
Okay.
The Denver Nuggets.
Oh!
Already, not last. 28th. 28th. The Denver Nuggets already didn't shoot a lot of threes, and they lost KCP. They were 28th in three-point attempts in preseason this year. And also, I didn't watch any of these games, so I don't know, but they went 1-4 in preseason. Just saying.
Did you see the Michael Malone stuff after the Suns game?
Yeah.
I saw the Michael Malone stuff during the Suns game. He seemed pissed.
He was just like, our guys aren't in shape, so I ran them.
You could tell. Yeah. And he talked about the three-point shooting and how difficult it is to come back on teams that shoot a ton of threes.
Yeah.
Who else you got there, Sam?
Dallas, 31st. Now, the reason there are 32 teams here is because the NBA's website includes a couple of international teams who played in preseason. The New Zealand Breakers, for one, who played. We're familiar with them, right? Or wait, who's the team we lost to? The Adelaide.
That's the New Zealand Breakers.
36ers, wasn't it? Or something?
No, did we lose to the Adelaide team?
Yeah, it was.
In Australia?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. No, you're right.
The New Zealand Breakers, I think we played at some point and beat. But the New Zealand Breakers went 0-3. Even they took 39 threes per game in preseason. That's more than J.J. Redick's Los Angeles Lakers, for reference.
Yeah. Who are trying to shoot a ton of threes, yeah.
But Dallas is there at the bottom. Clippers are at the bottom. Denver's at the bottom. some interesting teams. That's all I'm saying. But to your point, since this is a Suns preview, yes, have the Suns cracked the code? Is that what you're asking, Mike? Has Mike Budenholzer cracked it?
I'll let Kellan talk here, but one thing I wanted to point out, the game they shot the most three-point attempts, the game that the starting five did not play in, no Kevin Durant, no Devin Booker, that raised their averages quite a bit because I think they shot over 50 in that game. And then, of course, the only game where the full starting five played, I think it was 36 that they ended with in that game. So not to say that overall that's how averages work, right? It's going to fluctuate as the season goes along, but I do think more minutes played by Kevin Durant and Devin Booker will impact this overall amount because they shoot less threes. But overall, relative to where they are, not saying they're going to shoot 44, but 6th in preseason of NBA teams, by the way. I took out the Australian teams or whoever else was in there when I did these stats. But do you think they can maintain that sort of top 5, top 6 in three-point attempts this season, Kellan? What do you think?
No, I don't. I think top 5 and top 6 is ambitious. I think that's ambitious. You're looking for middle of the pack, honestly. I think you're looking for 35, 36 a game, and I know that the number going around right now is like they just need to get to like 37 and then they would be top 5, but 37 is not going to be top 5 anymore. It's just like it's happening so fast that I think like Boston might take 45, 46 a game this year, which is a crazy jump. But yeah, I don't think that they'll be that great at it, but I think that they'll be in a decent enough middle ground. And it's just like you can't just continuously lose games because of the math problem. For those of you who aren't really into the numbers too much, basically what was happening was the Suns were taking 26 threes and they were making 42% of those. But the team that came in and took 39 threes but shot 34% on those was actually doing better by the math because they just took more. And that is the part of the equation they at least have to cancel out getting destroyed in. And if they can just be a net neutral there, then I think everything else will take care of itself. Now, it can be one of the best strengths of this team, but I'm a very big believer when I see a person. I've probably said that on every single one of these preview pods we've done before. And that's the part of the team where, not that I'm negative about this, but it's such a big change in their identity, and it's mostly the same team from last year. So we'll see. I feel good about it, but again, do I expect them to be top 5 in attempts? And that's just Bud does everything there to cancel it? No, I think it goes deeper than that. But somewhere around, like, I'll guess right now that they're going to be 11th in 3-point attempts per game.
Mm-hmm. I think 11th would be more than enough for them, coupled with reducing their turnovers, which they have been doing in preseason too, by the way, to have a top offensive rating in the league. Not necessarily the top, but they'll shoot up those rankings. So I agree with Kellan. Kellan, this is a personal question more than a Suns question, but I just want to ask you, I've grown up and we've grown up through the three-point revolution. We've watched teams go from taking 15 a game in our time watching the league, all of us, like last 25 years or so. We've gone from watching teams take like 15 a game to 25 a game to 35 a game. All the while I've been cheering it on, saying, yes, be more modern, modernize your shot charts, maximize, optimize, all those other nerd words. Do we ever get off the wild ride, Kellan? Is there a number? Are we approaching a point where literally, like with the Boston Celtics, literally every shot is a 3 or layup and there's just nothing else? Where you're like, this, even for you, is less fun?
No, what I think is going to happen is there's going to be a rule change in the next 5 years that addresses this. I think it's coming. I think people are getting too good at taking threes. And I don't know if it's making the court bigger. I don't know if it's moving the line back. But we've talked about this on Playback before. Like, this is my hot take, that they're going to do something with 3 seconds defensively. They're going to do something to kind of figure out this imbalance that's happening. Because, and to your question more on like how I like the style if I don't, there were times that I thought the Celtics ran disgusting offense. Like, it was just literally drive and kick over and over again, and it was so boring to watch. Like, even if you're watching one-on-one stagnant offense, you're still watching like some skill between like the one. But if you're just watching drive, kick, like, yeah, it's good ball movement to watch when it's like clicking. But the Celtics, because they had so much shooting, all they would need was Tatum to drive and make one pass.
Yeah.
And
It wasn't
was
like a swing. It was just like the first guy who gets it chucks.
And it was against like mediocre defensive teams sometimes, so you could tell they were doing it in their sleep. Like they weren't actually like giving it their all, and they were still getting the shots, and it was like, this is just ugly. And so I think we're getting there, and I think it's going to happen because the number of players who are shooting 35% from three compared to 5 years ago is super higher. 40% is super higher, and eventually like 40% is going to be the league average is just going to keep going up. It hasn't gone up a ton, but I think it's just more about the quantity of guys who are shooting. I think that's something Kevin talked about when I asked him about this in training camp, and I think we're just going to keep getting there to the point of no return.
You know, just to counter what you guys are saying, I think there's a chance they end up in the top 10. And I think one of the reasons that is just because of the extent to which it's become part of the conversation internally. When Monty was asked about the team shooting more threes, he pushed back on that. When Frank Vogel
prison, basketball prison for Monty Williams, and
he's
Frank
coaching
Vogel
at a high school now.
and Kevin Young. He's coaching at a high school.
You missed that, Sam?
I did not see that. Why is he coaching? Just
he's
retire.
coaching his son. He's coaching his son.
Oh, he's
and
coaching
Tim
his son.
Duncan's
Okay.
son, like a
Okay,
couple of
okay,
former
fine,
NBA players'
fine.
sons. Okay.
Well,
Apparently,
he can do
Bruce
that.
Bowen
he could do that.
Bruce Bowen used to be the head coach and is saying he did not he was ousted basically, did not go peacefully.
Well,
when
to
he
be
did-
fair, yeah.
Monty
If you get
Williams.
Monty Williams. You can
I
get
will-
Monty
Yeah, you
Williams.
got
will
an
allow-
NBA
Yeah.
coach of
I
the
will
year.
allow Monty
Yeah.
Williams to have 1 year of fun coaching his son, and then he gets.
I think
sent
that counts
to,
as basketball prison in some
Then he
ways.
gets sent to the same basketball prison where we're putting Frank Vogel and Tony Bennett now as well.
Monty never openly asked for them to shoot more threes. He talked about it as if James Jones was forcing him to ask them to take more threes. Frank Vogel, even when he did talk about it, it was pretty clear that the team was not listening to him. So it didn't really matter what he was saying. But to me, organizationally, top to bottom this year, they're talking about it. Matt Ishbia talked about it. James Jones talked about it. Bartlestein talked about it. You know, Coach Bud comes out there. He's talking about it. Tyus Jones, Grayson Allen, Yusuf Nurkic, Mason Plumlee. They're all talking about it. Now, to some extent, Kevin Durant and Devin Booker are not talking about it in the same way. But I also think that's kind of okay in that those guys are the ones that are allowed to shoot different shots. Yeah, if they increase it because everyone's increasing their three-point attempts, that's good. But as long as everyone else around them is on the same page, this is it's different. It sounds different in the way they're talking about it than in years past. And maybe I'm a sucker here. Maybe I'm a chump for believing them. But it is a different approach to it than we've seen from the past. There was no reason to believe those Monty teams, looking back, there was no reason to believe those Monty teams are going to take more threes. He didn't want to. You know, that wasn't something he wanted to do.
But Landry Shamet, Mike. It depends on, you need the buy-in from the role players. You need the buy-in from the right role players. I don't want to put too much on this one kid's shoulders, but let's not lose sight of the fact that Ryan Dunn, we weren't expecting any three-point production from him this year.
We're going to talk about that. Yeah.
I know, but I think it's relevant here too, just to say it helps to hit your three-point attempt goals when your rookie, who everyone swears up and down cannot shoot for shit, comes in and takes more attempts literally in preseason than anyone else on the team and also shoots 40% on them. So
yeah.
Maybe we're going to hit those goals. Maybe we can get top 5. Let's talk about defense, guys.
All right. I was hoping for this.
What is the Suns' defensive identity? Here's how I wrote it. What is the Suns' defensive identity? And then I always write a little in smaller font, in parentheses.
A subheader, yeah.
Subheader, no, Ryan Dunn does not count. Ryan Dunn, I love him. We could talk about him in this segment if you want, Mike. But he alone, no one person alone, is a defensive identity. That's not what an identity is. We need more. That I would love if Ryan Dunn can come in and play 20, even 25 minutes per game. I would love if he can close games sometimes. We know he's going to be taking on the very best defensive assignments whenever he plays. And yet, we can't count on any of that from a rookie. It's too much to expect. And it's not enough to expect from the stars on this team and the other critical infrastructural pieces. And yeah, we need more in terms of a defensive identity. I've talked about it with you guys in the past, or at least with you, Mike. Like, yeah, I don't think they need to be at where they were defensively last year. I think they could get away with being a 15th or 16th best defense in the NBA and still being like a contender. But based on what we saw in preseason, even to get to that point, there are cracks showing for sure. And there are some worries that I have.
I want to give some stats before we let Kellan talk about this that are relevant to this conversation. So first of all, you throw out all the preseason stats when it comes to defense because the lineups are so weird. And like there was a game where none of the starters even played, even though it was against the Denver Nuggets starters. It just was a weird game. It doesn't really count, right? So the Suns ended up like 15th in defensive rating in preseason. None of that really matters. But my question when I wrote it out was how good/bad will this defense be? But to counter that, my subheader, if you will, what even is good defense now? Now, we had the conversation about three-pointers. I just want to give some contextual stats here on how defensive ratings have changed in the NBA in the last 10 to 15 seasons. Last year, the best defense in the NBA, the best defensive rating was the Minnesota Timberwolves. That was 108.4. That was their defensive rating. The 10th best defensive rating last year was 113.7, and the worst defensive rating in the NBA last season was 119.6. I think it was the
that
Charlotte
Indiana?
Hornets.
Oh,
I think
Charlotte.
it was Charlotte, yeah.
Okay.
10 seasons before that, 2013-14, the best defense in the NBA, 98.9.
10-point difference.
10-point difference.
10 years, yeah.
The 10th best defense in the NBA, 104.6, which would have been by far the best defense in the NBA last year. But the worst defense in the NBA 10 years ago, the worst defense in the NBA, 110.2, which would have been fourth best in the NBA in 23-24. So the conversation we just had about the amount of teams that are shooting three-pointers in the NBA this year and how that has changed the overall landscape of the NBA is pretty dramatic. So the question to me is, how good can this team be defensively? And how, in my personal frame of reference of this, how can I change my brain in realizing that sometimes a 112 defense may actually be a top 7 defense in the NBA going forward? But Kellan, how good do you think this team's defense can be, or how bad do you think they will be this upcoming season?
Yeah, to your point, you're not looking for like a 5-game streak of holding the opponent under 100 points. Like that's not the world that we live in anymore.
Ben Wallace ain't walking through those doors. Sorry to say.
The Davis brothers, even if they weren't brothers, Antonio and Dale are not walking through that door. I think this one is actually like threes to me, where it's incredibly simple. I think that if you get a basic yet consistent and engaged defensive effort from the big three, they will be good enough defensively. If those guys are disconnected and unengaged at times, like stars on defense typically are, then they will not be good enough defensively. I think that Nurk will do his job. I think that Tyus will do his job. I think Grayson and Royce will do their job. I think Monte Morris will do his job. I think that they have enough to be somewhere in the range that Sam is talking about, 14th to 22nd in defensive rating.
Oh,
like they
God,
can be
I hope
somewhere,
they're not 22nd.
They can be somewhere. Well, if they're a top 3 offense, which like they have to be this year, like that's the whole point of building the team this way. You have to be a top 3 offense. If those guys are consistent every night with their effort, with their engagement, then they'll be that good. They'll be somewhere in maybe bordering on top 10. But if they're just spacing out a couple of minutes a quarter, like those guys typically can do, then they'll be a bottom 10 team in defense, and then you'll be worried about where the team is at. But I just think it comes down to those 3 guys, because they play the Lakers, I think, twice in the first 5 games. Kevin's guarding LeBron. You look at Dallas is up on the 3rd game. Who's guarding Luka on this team?
We don't even know.
I don't know. So, and guess what? The best answers are one of those three guys.
Yeah,
so,
it might have to be
like,
Booker, yeah.
They have to just, and it's not even on ball all the time either. It's a lot of it is on ball, sure, but it's off ball too. Like they're not just, you can't just be Steph in this defense. None of them can be Steph anymore. Tyus Jones might have to be Steph sometimes because he is small. So those guys just have to lock in. I think all three of them are capable. I think that Brad's defense was underrated last year. I thought that he was pretty solid, and I thought that he actually did a half-decent job on Ant considering the circumstances and what they were working with. And like, remember, Ant didn't really have any crazy moments, or crazy games, I should say, but he just went off in like a 6-minute spurt in the second half of 2 of those games to go nuts. Because remember, in Game 4 especially, it was Cat keeping them in the game the whole time, and Ant didn't have it going. So I think that all three of those guys can bring it, and we know Book can, we know Kevin can, and I'm saying Brad can too. But will they? I don't know.
Well,
Book was good in preseason.
He was. Actually, yeah, Book was excellent in his last game defensively. Truly excellent. But yeah, it's a different thing to give the sustained effort. Strategically, Kellan, effort is one thing. Effort's the bare minimum. You need effort. You also need a strategy, even in today's NBA where offenses are so good, it feels like maybe there is no good there's no elite defensive strategy anymore, at least if you just don't have elite personnel. But we know Bud loves that drop defense. He loves the deep drop. Nurkic is going to be sitting in it. Plumlee's going to be sitting in it. Oso is going to be sitting in it, even based on what I've seen in preseason. Do you have any thoughts,
The
Kellan?
most aggressive big was Plumlee in preseason.
Yeah. Do you have any thoughts on like scheme when it comes to Bud and like, do they need to be more versatile, or is this something, a conversation to shelve until March when we're gearing up for the playoffs, or, is it something that concerns you right now?
I think a lot of your listeners know this already, but in case some of your listeners are kind of surface level on just understanding Budenholzer as a coach, his last 3 years in Atlanta, his teams finished 5th, 2nd, and 4th in defensive rating, and then his first 2 years in Milwaukee, they led the league in defensive rating. Like, he gets a lot of attention as an offensive mind and like the threes and the shooting bigs and all that kind of stuff. He's arguably like just as much of a defensive coach as he is an offensive coach, and this is where it gets really interesting to me because, one, I wanted to say that because he's capable of creating excellent defenses, but also, what do his teams look like on offense if they're not that great defensively? We don't really have a great answer for it. I'm curious to see. I don't know.
Yeah, I think it's really interesting. I don't know. I just don't know how good they can be because I genuinely think that the biggest issue they had last year was transition defense. They were the worst transition defensive team that I watched. Like, I don't know how the stats actually bear out in that, but like if there was a turnover, the other team was scoring. It felt like every single time. And they're going to be less turnovers this year. So if they start eliminating the turnovers, that's really helpful. On the other side of that, there was a stretch during the Lakers game where there was just pick and roll after pick and roll after pick and roll directly at Tyus Jones and Yusuf Nurkic, and they did not have a solution for that. And, I don't know what the solution for that is going to be if those are the two guys involved in that pick and roll. Nurkic, not bad, but Nurkic needs some help from the perimeter, I think, to be effective. And Tyus Jones, I don't know.
If
it's a
that
bit of
was
a question mark.
If that was, and again, one person is not an identity, but here I go bringing up his name again. If that guy who you're bumping bodies with is Ryan Dunn, and
it's not good that his name is coming up this much. Can I say that?
I know it's not.
I
know it's not Kellan, but he's really good at this. He's really good at defense. If you're coming around and you're attacking Nurkic in a drop, but you can never quite relax because you go into your shot, and then there's Ryan Dunn from behind you, whisking it out of the air, and now the ball's going the other way, and the Suns have an offensive a transition bucket or whatever. He just can put pressure on. He applies pressure in a way that Tyus simply can't, and part of me wonders. I almost want to ask you, Kellan, will Ryan Dunn close games this year?
Well, hold on. Let's hold on that for a second because I do want to just get to the point that I was getting at, which, Kellan, you were talking about the big three and how good they're going to be defensively. And I do think it's kind of interesting, the reputation they all have. Devin Booker, to me, was not very good on defense last year. And I think he's had years where he's been pretty okay. Never been like a great defender overall. Too much really offensive load to carry. There's rarely NBA players that have as much offensive responsibility as he does that are also excellent on the defensive end. There's really none in the NBA right now since Kawhi Leonard doesn't play anymore. Bradley Beal, up and down. I think with Bradley Beal, more than anything, he just loses his place sometimes, and he's a little bit behind and is trying to catch up. There is theoretically, continuity can help that, and maybe that's something that will actually benefit him, and that he's more used to playing with these guys now. He understands better where they're going to be defensively. That can be helpful. Of course, we always point at the Zion games. He's capable of guarding guys when he's locked in. I think all of these guys are capable of guarding guys when they're locked in. Kevin Durant, a lot of people looked at last year as one of his best defensive seasons in the NBA, and I understand why. I think he was pretty vital to their defense last year because of Nurkic being on the floor a lot. I think he's really helpful in helping off the ball and being that sort of off-ball defender. I also think he was one of the worst transition defensive players on the team last year. If there was a turnover, he wasn't really running down most of the time. He was kind of the guy that if there was a play where you could kind of give up on the play, he may have been the first to give up on that play a lot of the time. And I think for young guys, when they're trying to play in the NBA, they kind of need guys like that to pick it up and run down on defense in transition, just to show that sort of leading by example thing. So I do think there is a lot riding on how well the big three played defensively, but I do think that all three of them have heights they can reach that they never reached last year together. I don't know how sustainable that is over the course of a regular season. If they do play to the levels that we think that they could potentially play to defensively, how good do you think the defense can get, Kellan?
I think that it can get pretty good. I think, again, somewhere right at the edge of the top 10, if not in it, like 9 to 14 range. Like, I think that is actually possible, because I think Kevin, when he was engaged defensively, was actually still really good last year, and there was like those weird should he make all defense conversations that happened around like March. The Kings game when he guarded Sabonis and dominated on both ends of the court in like the last 6 minutes comes to mind. But I think it's easy to forget that when he came over in the trade, he was having a crazy two-way year, and that wasn't that long ago. Mm-hmm. It was 2 years ago. Yeah. And I think that defensively, he's shown a lot. I'm going to make an executive decision here and go to my next question, because it kind of naturally transitions in. Because we've brought up Ryan Dunn enough as it is. And so my next question was, do the Suns have the wing they need by the playoffs? So does Ryan Dunn develop into that wing, or do they make a trade to find that wing? Does that wing become available on the trade market? There's obviously a huge need on this team for a 6'6", stocky big wing, or someone who is more like 6'8", 6'9", and wiry. They're missing that type of defender that seemingly every team in the NBA has at this point. Theoretically, the Suns have it in Ryan Dunn, but I think it's really early on his offense. I'm not sitting here and denying that he had a great preseason, but to now even like pencil him into the rotation even 4 weeks from now or 2 weeks from now, I think is getting a bit out of it, a bit.
It's a little scary,
braggadocious, if you will. Just because offensively it was the red flags were so severe that it's just I'm not willing to cast those aside. So you have Grayson's contract, you have Royce's contract, you have Josh's contract. Is there a trade out there? Do you have enough? Does the perfect name become available, kind of like Royce did last year for what he did, where you just needed another good player last year and you got Royce for that price? Is that type of guy available? Is your center rotation good enough to where, although I don't think like if Nurk is playing, I don't get the Nurk trade thing, because if he's playing well enough, the Suns are just going to keep him, and if he's not playing well enough, no one's going to want him. So I don't really think that
they do have a pick.
You can talk about trading him. Well, it's like a similar sized contract, I guess, would be like the main thing. Like it's similar to Grayson and Royce, who are better players, so you would probably want to, because the guy you're going to be acquiring for Nurk is going to take their minutes anyway. But yeah, that's my way of saying they've got to find that guy. One of them is currently on the roster that could be that guy. But you guys have done the fake trade stuff a lot, and like you look at this stuff way more than I do. Those guys just don't really become available in the trade market anyway, is my concern here. But do you think it's an absolute necessity? Can this team win if they don't play that kind of guy 17 minutes a game? Or do you absolutely need one of those in the NBA no matter what?
Okay, I'm glad you brought Ryan Dunn up, and we'll talk about the trade market as well, but I just wanted to mention my rookie question. I kept teasing it, of course, and it was, can the rookies raise the ceiling of this team this year? And that's the way I posted this question. You mentioned it, Kellan. We've brought up Ryan Dunn's name maybe too much as part of this conversation, maybe to the point of maybe it's a little scary how much that we're relying on this guy to be everything that this team is lacking. But I did want to give him some credit since this is right after preseason after all. We just have to mention it. And I wanted to talk about some of the stats from preseason first, and then we'll talk about what he can be as a team or as a player on this team this year. And then, of course, whether or not they can find something in the trade market, because I'm not sure what's out there, and I'm curious if you have any names that you've thought about too, Kellan. But Dunn finished with the third most three-pointers attempted of all rookies in preseason, which I thought was crazy. That's, in some ways, that's a Coach Bud stat. Shot, as we all know, 43.5% on those. But he also tied, and I liked this stat, he also tied for second best in overall plus-minus from all rookies in the preseason. He ended the preseason at plus 34. There was only 8 rookies total. Not a lot of rookies playing, but only 8 rookies total, even in double digits for plus-minus. And the only guy that was higher in plus-minus than Ryan Dunn is not someone you would expect. His name is Dennis Jenkins. He plays on the Detroit Pistons, and he's a two-way player. He only really played in garbage time. So all the garbage time that he played in with the Detroit Pistons is how he got up higher than plus 34. I think he ended at plus 39. So this is all to say that when Ryan Dunn played in preseason with the Suns this year, they were good. As a team, they played really well. Now, he had moments, I think, in particular during the Denver Nuggets game where he was the star on the floor since none of the stars played, and he lived up to that. Now, I think it's fair, Kellan, you mentioned being, the red flags for his offense were so huge coming into the league. So not necessarily believing in that is another thing. Now, I did word this as the rookies. I think Oso Ighodaro, we can talk more about bigs and whether or not there's a trade to be made there as well. I think right now all the hype's on Ryan Dunn because of how well he plays. He looks like an NBA player right now. Oso Ighodaro has a lot of skills. I'm not sure if he can play right away, but Ryan Dunn looks like an NBA player right now. So this is all to say, I'm not sure if it's Ryan Dunn. I guess I'll throw it to you, Sam. First of all, we can talk about trades, but Ryan Dunn, do you think it's possible that Ryan Dunn is the wing that this team needs by the time of the playoffs?
Yes, it's possible. I go back to the series we had. Of course, we beat this team in the first round, but remember when we played New Orleans a couple years back? And yes, of course, I'm going to draw the comparison to Herb Jones. I'm not the first one to do it because the idea with Herb Jones was just, can he shoot a little bit? And he did in his rookie year. And he played, as I look at the box scores now, 38 minutes per game in that first round series between New Orleans and Phoenix. Do you guys remember that?
Oh, yeah.
38 minutes per game for Herb Jones in his rookie year.
Okay,
yes,
yeah. Chris Paul tried to kill him. I remember. That specifically.
He played 30 minutes per game in his rookie season. He averaged exactly 30 minutes per game. And then he went all the way up to 38 as a rookie in his first series. Now, is Ryan Dunn Herb Jones? I don't know. But he certainly could be. That's not that high of a line for him to go. That's not saying he needs to be Kawhi Leonard in year one. He needs to be an all-time great. He absolutely could be that. To Kellan's point, there are all of these trade targets as well, or rather, players on the Suns roster who you could argue their contracts are almost meant to be traded, whether it be Royce or Grayson or Nurkic or Okogie. So, yeah, we're going to run into that as well, and I'm sure we're going to have this conversation several times. But I have faith in Ryan Dunn, way more than I expected to after watching him not play so well in Summer League. And to be honest, I almost want to turn the question back on you guys because I feel like Oso and Ryan played so well so far that I almost worry, what if they become trade targets themselves? And is there any world in which this team just cashes in on the only couple of assets it has other than the 2031 first-round pick that they do have in the future.
The one reason I'm not worried about that is that they just don't make that much money.
It's just the aggregation.
Yeah, because they
that
can't.
kinda
Like
saves us,
Ryan Dunn makes $2.5 million in this year. So like, who are they going to trade him for? If they can aggregate him with Nurkic or something, then that would be something that I'd be more concerned with. But I don't necessarily think that that's a concern this year, at least for me. I think maybe to think about the part of Kellan's question that was related to the trade market, I'll pitch this at both of you guys. Grayson Allen makes $15.6 million. How good... He is signed for 4 years, right, with the player option in his fourth year. How good of a player would that have to be coming back to the Suns in order for you to be okay trading Grayson Allen? Like, there's an obvious guy that we brought up, Sam and I, we brought up on the podcast, mostly me, Dorian Finney-Smith, who makes a similar amount of money as Grayson Allen. I don't think that's... I mean, he is kind of Kellan. He's kind of meets the criteria that you were talking about. Is he good enough to trade Grayson Allen for? And especially for a team that really lacks a lot of shot creation from the bench.
Yeah, like, I mean, off the top of my head, the thing that gets so difficult about this is, like, I'm looking at the Clippers, and they're going to implode, and Derrick Jones Jr. is on, like, a pretty friendly deal right now, but he makes $10 million a year, and they don't have, like, a salary match. Like, you have to be so, like, exact with the numbers that you're getting back. Like, someone like... If the Pelicans and their, like, how they're restructuring their team, that involves, like, getting rid of Trey Murphy. Like, they just don't have enough value to offer for someone like Trey Murphy. Even if Grayson is, like, an awesome player, but again, like, the money doesn't... It's just really difficult to make happen on that alone, and I think that even New Orleans is a good team to bring up here because they obviously would have made a trade by now if they could, but I think that the trade... market is so restricted right now that teams
for Ingram, you mean, or for Trey Murphy?
For the teams that are like handcuffed by first apron and second apron stuff, aka the war criminal CJ McCollum and what he instituted. Teams like New Orleans and Golden State are literally built right now to make a trade, and they can't make a trade. And I think that has to do with the limitations in place, like matching salaries and all the things teams can't do in trades. I think that it's proving to be really difficult. I know that other trades have been getting done, but just look at those two teams right now and tell me they're not designed to make a trade right now. They clearly are. So I think that it's just going to be really difficult to rely on that, and I think it's more about looking at if Dunn can do this. It's really worth highlighting two things. One, his jumper is not broken. It is not currently getting sent to the shadow realm like what's happening to Mikal right now. God bless our sweet boy.
Yeah,
I hope that
so
he figures that out.
Yeah.
That's very sad to see. His jumper works, and Book said it himself, like he was only taking 1-3 a game and the mechanics looked fine. It's just, Book didn't say this part, but everyone you talk to about this stuff and you watch him, especially the college stuff, it's just mindset and confidence. And if he keeps shooting it, then maybe that will come with 34%. But again, if he keeps shooting it...
certainly has the confidence.
You're not going to say prison here,
Certainly.
Sam? I expected a...
Well,
Tony Bennett prison,
to the same one as CJ McCollum. Yeah.
In the Lakers...
CJ McCollum can be a cellmate.
In the Lakers game, I did see the first bits of hesitation show up, and it's like that just can't happen. Like it just can't happen at any point this year, and it's going to. So how he responds when it does happen is going to be interesting. And then two, if you haven't watched any of the games yet, or you still haven't seen any of them yet, like he is just as good of a defender as you're imagining, and I'll even go as far as saying he's a better defender than you think off the top of your head right now.
Yeah.
He's one of the 3 best defenders on the team already as a rookie, which is insane. And I think there's a good chance that if he picks everything up quickly enough, he could be the best defender on the team by the end of the year. Like he's that good defensively.
I think that's
so
probably
again,
going to happen, yeah.
If he can just shoot 32 from 3 and then do do tangible things off the dribble in 0.5 situations when he's dribbling into no one and it's just open space and all he has to do is make one kick out pass, then he will play 20 minutes a game, if not start by the end of the year. Like he doesn't have to shoot 36 or 37. So that's like the big point I want to make on him.
I don't know about best. Because, like KD is still really good all around and he has some length that Dunn doesn't have. The effort isn't there as much as, we'd always like it to be. But I think Ryan Dunn has come in and in the span of 5 preseason games, like his highlights, his flashiness, he's the most fun defender the Suns have had since Sean Marion. I don't know. Like, how long has it been, guys? Who else would you highlight from the past 15 years of Suns basketball that you would even say their highs can rival this guy's highs?
Hakeem Warwick had some really sick shot blocking at some points. I think people forget.
Hakeem Warwick. Yeah. That's not the name I was expecting. I mean, like, you know, PJ was great, but he was a hustle guy, but he just did not have the gifted athleticism that Ryan Dunn has, like the God-given skills, quite honestly, and combine that with the confidence and the mentality that you're talking about, Kellan. I'm trying not to have too high expectations, but it's hard not to. He looks really good.
I'm looking at salaries right now. You know, just thinking about, we've talked a lot, you and I, Sam, about Nurkic and Grayson as potential trade bait, right, for teams. But if you go down the line there now you're talking about Josh Okogie, who signed that contract meant to be traded, or even Royce O'Neal, who I don't think that contract was like a trade me contract, but I do think if Ryan Dunn becomes a playable player on this team, then Royce O'Neal becomes a little bit expendable as far as what you can trade for him. And it's really tough to find players that make less than him, Royce O'Neal, that are valuable. You know, like if you could trade, like if you could trade Josh Okogie for Fontecchio, I guess.
Yeah, you do it. I just don't think you talk yourself into that being like the huge needle mover. I mean, a lot is going to change between now and February, so we really just have to wait and see. There are going to be $5 or $6 million players who surprise everyone, and so we'll see.
Kispert's
how
the guy, right?
The deck. What is Kispert
like
make
$5
again?
million. I mean, he's up for extension too. I think. Yeah,
they're gonna want the pick, and I don't want to give them the pick for Kispert. I really like Kispert, but like we need defenders.
I know.
Kispert.
It's true.
Yeah.
I mean, they just need guys that can do stuff that the big three can't. And that's, I think, why Ryan Dunn has become such a huge part of the conversation. Not to mention just the sheer lack of flexibility that the Suns came into the offseason with, and potentially picking a player that could be effective right away. Of course, every Suns fan is going to latch on to that because that's the hope that we've all been looking for this team. Now, you're talking specifically about wings, Kellan, and I guess I'm looking at this and maybe I have less confidence in the fact that they can potentially trade for a wing that is a viable wing. You know, and Grayson Allen, I think, has value, like a lot of value on his contract. And if they make a trade with Grayson Allen, it's tough to find a player that's going to be valuable that makes less than him, that makes it worthwhile. Like, I could see a world if things go badly for the Suns where they can actually extract assets from Grayson Allen. But like as it currently stands, it's tough to find a player that actually makes sense for this team that makes less than him, that's better than him. Because he was really good last year. Like, and maybe he could be better this year with those giant shoulders. Maybe he's a more effective defender now. I don't really know. But even beyond that, I wonder, one of my questions was, are the bigs that the Suns have on this team going to finish this season with this team? You know, are we sure that Nurkic is going to finish? And, you know, to your point, I know, but they do have a pick. Like, yes, Nurkic, if he plays badly, he's not going to have a lot of trade value. But if Nurkic plays badly, that 2031 pick starts to look even more valuable to some teams. You know what I mean? If they don't play well as a team, and maybe they attach it to him and they try to find something for him, or Mason Plumlee, I don't think is exactly a great trade target, but it's at least, even Oso Ighodaro, it doesn't make much money, but what are they going to do if that position becomes a problem for this team as well? Because outside of that, they're pretty stacked with guards.
You can't, by the way, the answer here is not start Oso. I know a lot of people really like Oso, but did you see what Anthony Davis was doing to him? Like, imagine him guarding Joel Embiid or Nikola Jokic. I am a huge Oso guy. I said that he can play positive NBA minutes right away, and he's going to have a long and successful NBA career. I don't know if that's going to be as like a starting center or a starting center that plays 34 minutes a game. Like, it's a very specific set of tools that he has. So I think that's a really important place to start, because I know a handful of people, or I know that people watch Nurkic play not very well, or even when Plumlee wasn't playing well in the preseason, people felt that way. But I had that down too, just like, does the center rotation like work in the same way that I talked about Brad? It's like, is this enough? Are you going to get enough from the position? And I think you can. I think that Nurk was solid last year. I know that he's a really frustrating player for the fans to watch, but I think overall with what you need out of him, it was quietly, again, to the point with Brad, Nurk, Steven, who's now with PHNX, had the threads during the Minnesota series. Like, Nurk played pretty solid defense that series for the most part. He was solid. So
it's the offense that disappeared in that series. But
exactly. I think they'll have enough, and like Nurk shooting threes, like again, that's a really simple thing. Like if he's making them, great. If he isn't, then what do you do? But yeah, I don't know. I think that center actually might be, with what they have to trade, it might be the more interesting thing to look at on the trade market, because I think getting the type of center they would want is going to be a lot easier than getting the type of wing that every single team is going to want.
Exactly. Yeah.
Well, apparently they decided that, Frank Kaminsky wasn't enough.
He played pretty well too, actually. Surprised me.
Yeah, I thought he did. And I was encouraged also, just by how much Oso played.
Even at power forward, by the
gave
way.
him a lot of
I was
minutes.
going to mention that. Maybe
And
Oso's the wing that they want.
That's what I was going to say. B is that they played Oso at power forward. Now, they did it next to Frank Kaminsky because he's a floor spacer. Can Nurkic be a floor spacer to allow him to play some of those minutes? I don't know. We'll see. But clearly they're thinking about these things. And that's the most important thing, right? Is like they know that they have different lineup combinations to sort through and work out, and Ryan Dunn's going to play several positions, and maybe Oso is going to play multiple positions, and they have the open roster spot. There is built-in flexibility that allows this team to make quite a lot of different adjustments mid-season. And so, I think we just have to go in with an open mind and assume that we're not really looking at a finished product here.
I want to open it up to the listeners, too. If you have trade proposals, I love hearing them. I like me. For there was a while there where Sam tried to bait me into making a fake trade every single week on the podcast, and then I backed out because I didn't want all the hate. But I like seeing them. So if you want to send me some opportunities for trades for this team, I'm curious. And like you said, Sam, I think as the season progresses and changes, like I was looking at the Nuggets roster and going, what if Jokic misses like 50 games? What do they do? Are this just like, what do they do?
Well, then they're Memphis last year, right? Like that's if any team loses their best player for 50 games. Oh, do they not have a pick
I don't know
this
that they have it this year, but I know they've traded a lot of them, and I'm curious just what happens with their roster. Do they start making trades, for example? It's just going to be a fascinating
No.
season.
If Jokic misses 50 games, then they punt, like just like Memphis did last year, and say, okay, we'll come back in a year. We'll see you guys in a year. And the Suns would hopefully absorb as much of that success that is now sitting void in the Western Conference as much as possible, and ascend into the top 4 seeds.
We should have,
But it could happen to anyone. Shea could miss 50 games, right? Luka could miss 50 games. We don't want this to happen to anyone, but of course it's always a concern.
But what teams would start trading away pieces if that happened? That's, I think, the more interesting piece. Because
let me look at the Western Conference standings real quick.
I mean, I think to
I
Kellan's point,
because I already looked at the bottom feeders.
It's definitely the Clippers. Yeah, they're a team built for trades.
I already looked at Portland too, just because they're so bad, and they are built for trades, but they're built for trades with players who make way too much money. We can't trade for Malcolm Brogdon or Jeremy Grant.
And so, DeAndre Ayton's backup just had one of the best preseason games of any player. Pretty fast. He's actually probably going to be on the trade market pretty soon. You want to trade for him?
Is
trade
there
back,
like a bubble?
Kellan, get him back.
I'm good, man.
Is there another bubble Western Conference team here, Kellan, that you think like this team?
Well, New
thinks
Orleans,
they can
I thought was
compete,
interesting.
But they're not going to be able to. Yeah, New Orleans.
That's
is
what
that
Kellan
team,
said. Yeah, that was a good shout
But
out.
I'm wondering if there's another one because Houston is young, so I don't think they want to do it unless they can trade up.
What about the Lakers?
Like a team that's going to self-destruct and should have a lot of pieces.
Yeah, the Lakers aren't gonna. They might self-destruct, but they're not gonna.
They're just not that good. They don't have a lot.
Chicago is my favorite pick for this, but I think they're going to hold on to all their guys and be perennially mid because that's all they want to do. I'm not saying trade for Zach LaVine. I'm saying like if they want to go with Ayo Dosunmu or Kobe White or something.
Yeah, that'd be fascinating.
Can I hit us with one more question before we get out of here? Unless you guys have more.
Well,
I want to talk about leadership. Intangibles, leadership, real quick. This team needs a grounding, calming force. They were the worst team in the fourth quarter last year. I think they need that sort of calming presence, like literally for the on-court impact that it has, but also for all the off-court stuff. And, kind of who's going to be a professional, who's going to teach the young guys to be leaders, and, who's going to hold the star players accountable, right? So it comes in many different forms. For a while, we always knew, and we never questioned that Chris Paul was that guy. In the post-Chris Paul era, it has been difficult to discern who is that guy in this franchise. And just this year, is it going to be Bud, who the players seem to be much more willing to listen to than Frank Vogel? Is it going to be Tyus Jones, or kind of just the combined impact of Tyus Jones, Monte Morris? Is it going to be one of KD or Booker taking on a new leadership role later into their careers? Kellan, how do you feel about the leadership aspect of how this roster is built?
I think it's fine. I think that there's nothing. I think it's just impossible to like move on from Chris and then kind of adapt on the fly like they tried to. I think just anything's going to be an improvement over Vogel because they will be more open to listening to someone else.
Mm-hmm.
Just anyone else.
The rebound aspect of this, like in a relationship, basically, is what I'm saying.
Yeah. I think look, Gerald was on the podcast recently. He said he thought that Devin Booker was underrated as a vocal leader, that people didn't realize how vocal he can be. And maybe that's true. Maybe the Olympics has an impact on it. Everyone likes to point at that as something that changes the following season. And I don't know, maybe it does, but I think that...
Well, like, why is Ryan Dunn taking so many threes? Because fucking Kevin Durant and Devin Booker are telling him to take threes.
Yeah.
You know?
I mean, Bull last season, too. I think he gives a lot of credit to KD. I think KD has a massive, massive impact on young players. And I think they really care when he says something. I don't know if you guys saw there was a rookie that Steph Curry talked to him after a game recently, and he was asked about it in a post-game press conference. Forgive me, I don't remember his name. He literally broke down in tears describing that interaction because of how much it meant to him that somebody he loves and has watched his whole life is now talking to him about his game and about playing basketball. Like, these legends, their voices matter. What they say matters to these young people. And I understand, I think it's a lot motivated by TNT and Charles Barkley, the way people talk about Kevin Durant's leadership. I understand that. But I do think players do talk about it differently than former players, if you will. Like, there is like a disconnect somewhere in there that at least has to be accounted for. But I don't know. I think Bud is obviously the guy that we're sort of riding on, and we have the most hope for making a leadership impact on this team.
Certainly for changing the culture, but I know you've also made the point in the past, Mike, that you don't want your head coach to be the answer to this question.
I want it to be Booker. I want Booker to be
I partially bring up the question, and I hope it's Booker too, but I really just have so much Tyus Jones stock. We built Chris Paul in the aggregate, and he's a professional. He's just a professional who I think the veterans on this team are going to have so much respect for, and are going to understand he's always looking out for them when they share the floor together. And I've been really impressed by his interviews and his answers to media questions. So that's my guy.
I'm very excited about this season. Very, very excited about this season. And it's a good time, by the way, if you'd like to join us on our Patreon, patreon.com/thetimeline. You'll get an extra episode every week. And you can join us on our private Discord as Twitter burns to the ground. Discord is a fun place to be. So feel free to join us at patreon.com/thetimeline. Kellan Olson. Follow Kellan on Twitter. I know I just said it's burning the ground, but he's still valuable in there.
Can I sneak one more in? I know you're on a deadline right now.
Sure.
But I just have one more I just want to say out loud somewhere before the season starts. Is this team going to shoot enough at the rim? They shot 25th. They were ranked 25th in attempts at the rim last year. Nurkic and Bradley Beal are the two returnees who shot above average at the rim in terms of frequency last year. Nurk's going to be further away from the rim. Don't know what Brad's role is going to be. I'm hearing a lot about floaters on this team. Like, Tyus Jones has a good floater. Oso Guidaro has a good floater. A lot of floaters we're talking about. And I just want to see how often they shoot at the rim. So I think threes are going to be a focus for everyone.
Threes have an impact on the rim, too. It opens up the driving lane. It opens up the cutting lanes.
Yeah. So can they? Because they have to, unless they're really, really good about shooting threes, they're still going to have to get their stuff at the rim a lot more too.
I definitely want to see more of it, Kellan. I have a feeling I'm going to be yelling at them a lot about it on playbacks together. Is my answer for you? So I'm not sure.
Kellan, what do you got coming up this week on ArizonaSports.com?
So Will at I don't think this has been announced anywhere fully yet, but I think it's okay if I say this. We're having an Al McCoy tribute show on Tuesday at 6:00. It's going to be hosted by Vince Marotta and Dave Burns, who have been around like our air and like Valley Sports forever. I'll be part of it as well. Arizona Sports at Night will be on Tuesday, and then of course on Wednesday, is the season opener. So an hour before tip-off, you can go on to the Arizona Sports app or arizonasports.com and listen to our pregame show for 30 minutes. I'll be on there all the time. For all the road games, I'll be on there the whole time. And then for home games, I'll be intermittently in and out just because of how busy I am during home games. And then we have more shows throughout the week. We'll have the Empire of the Suns podcast still going every week. I'll still have a story after every game, telling you what happened in it, all that kind of stuff. So I'm staying busy, man.
You're a hardworking man, Kellan. Thank you so much for joining us.
Yeah, thanks, man.
For over a century, Johnny Walker has shared its bold spirit with the game of golf. Now, crafted with Devereaux Golf, Johnny Walker introduces the Johnny Walker Blue Label-inspired Sunday Golf Bag, elevating the game with sleek design, blue label hues, and refined gold accents. Celebrate your hole-in-one with a premium Sunday bag crafted by Devereaux Golf. Submit proof of your achievement to johnnywalker.com/blue-in-1. Please drink responsibly.